Forrest Gump is constantly included in all sorts of lists of the best movies in history. It has been quoted and turned into countless memes.
Run, Forrest, run!
And the recognizability of the protagonist has long gone beyond the cinema world. The movie is loved and rewatched not only in America, but all over the world. But what really makes Forrest Gump so unique? Why does the movie, released in 1994, remain iconic to this day? And how deeply do we understand the story of a simple-minded young man who became a national symbol of America? Why do some criticize it for being too conservative? And why do others find the therapeutic optimism in the movie? And yet, it's hard to argue with his phenomenal success. In the summer of 1994, Forrest Gump quickly became one of the biggest hits of the year and earned over $670 million on a budget of $55 million. And at the 95th Oscars, he won 6 statuettes, including Best Movie and Best Actor. It is even more surprising that such success came to the movie. Far from a Hollywood action movie, it is only a saga about a man with a low IQ who changes the fate of people he meets on the way while becoming a witness and participant in the key events of American history. So, what is the mystery of this story of a naive guy who managed to dance with Elvis, shake hands with the President of the United States, and even accidentally become an early investor in a technology giant? How did the director manage to turn Winston Groom's novel into a modern parable about good-heartedness and belief in miracles? We'll talk about it all in our video together. We'll take a fresh look at Forrest Gump to see why it still touches the hearts of audiences around the world. But before we get started, please like this video in advance, as we are trying very hard to be helpful to you. And of course, we'll be grateful if you share your thoughts in the comments. So let's begin.
Over there! They're over there!
The plot of the Forrest Gump movie spans approximately 30 years. It begins in the mid-1950s and ends in the 80s. Even at a quick glance, it becomes clear that Robert Zemeckis' movie is a vast historical panorama of America in the second half of the 20th century, almost an encyclopedia of the sometimes contradictory life of the whole country. It's hard to say what it's about. The Vietnam War and post-traumatic stress disorder, about the collapse of the counterculture and hippies, about fate and tragic love. It seems to be about everything at once. Forrest Gump, like Moby Dick or War and Peace, is the plot of a large-scale story that connects a variety of motifs and themes, from domestic violence to religiosity. The literary comparison here is no accident. Zemeckis' movie is one of those examples where the film adaptation has not only surpassed the source material, but also displaced it from public memory. The main difference between the book and the movie is in the tone. While Winston Groom's novel of the same name was more of a venomous satire on the author's contemporary America, the film adaptation, on the contrary, turned out to be a fairy tale for a wide range of viewers. At the same time, Groom remained somewhat disappointed with the deal. He claimed that he was underpaid part of the profits from the grand success of the movie. In the mid-1990s, when Forrest Gump was released, America was preparing for a leap into the new millennium. It seemed that all the major upheavals were behind, and a bright future awaited the country ahead. Therefore, it was necessary to present the audience with a comprehensible image that would inspire new achievements and give optimism. The story of Forrest Gump is inseparably linked to the history of the United States, and Forrest is its symbol, in a certain way, a bridge between the America of the past and the America of the future. At the beginning of the movie, we learn that Forrest is not only a native of Alabama, one of the most conservative states and the heart of the South, but also a descendant of Ku Klux Klan co-founder Nathaniel Forrest. These are the attributes of the America of the past. But over the course of the narrative, the protagonist keeps opening doors to the future. From his accidental participation in the technology boom and becoming a shareholder in a fruit company, to the legendary smiley face design and the exposure of the Watergate scandal. The movie strives to immerse the audience in the era, and it's done not so much through costumes and sets, but through recognizable music. Elvis Presley, Jimi Hendrix, Bob Dylan, and many others in the movie. They all turned from icons of rock and pop culture into sonic markers of the time. By the way, the album Forrest Gump, the soundtrack, became a bestseller as it included popular hits from several decades and hit the charts, fueling interest in the movie. Despite its apparent optimism, Forrest Gump also has a hint of historical pessimism. The movie is based on a system of repetitions. Sometimes it is emphasized by mise en scene, sometimes by plot motifs. For example, Forrest's son has the same name as his father. All of this is a reminder that human history seems to be moving in circles, and new generations are once again caught up in wars and conflicts, as if the lessons of the past remain unused. Although the authors insisted on the apolitical nature of the movie, many viewers saw Forrest Gump as a literal conservative manifesto, celebrating American ideals, family, religiosity, and hard work. The epidemic of AIDS, which was the cause of Jenny's death, according to the popular version, is also awkwardly covered in the movie. Moreover, some critics believe that the movie has failed to stand the test of time. Forrest Gump, as he was envisioned by Robert Zemeckis and screenwriter Eric Roth, is impossible in America after the tragic events of September 11, 2001. The movie looks at American history with a naive smile, but it's inappropriate in the new reality. The 21st century began for the American nation with a great catastrophe, and the country needed completely different heroes. Meanwhile, Winston Groom's book got a sequel in the form of the novel Gump and Company, but the film adaptation never saw a sequel just because of the changed atmosphere in the United States. Forrest Gump is demonstrated in the movie not only as a bridge between the past and the future, but also as a mediator between different groups of people who can provide America with a new unity. He finds a common language with different people. Jenny, a member of the countercultural movement, Bubba, a representative of an ethnic minority, and Lieutenant Dan, who embodies the America of the rifle and the boot. We should not forget about Forrest's mother. She represents the wise older generation in the movie. Forrest himself is an incredibly interesting character. Throughout most of the story, he doesn't change much, but the people close to him do. The most radical transformation is experienced by Lieutenant Dan. After severe injuries in the war, he thought his life was over, but the sudden appearance of Forrest gives him a chance for rebirth. Their friendship is like an inverted version of Army brotherhood, creative and unpoisoned by militarism. Interestingly, for a realistic depiction of Lieutenant Dan's amputated legs, actor Gary Sinise had to wear special blue chroma key stockings, which were digitally removed in post-production. Sinise was nominated for an Oscar for this role, and many consider his character to be one of the most powerful in the movie.
I never thanked you for saving my life.
Literally, the first thing we learn about the protagonist is that he has a low IQ and cannot study in a regular school. However, as the plot progresses, Forrest repeatedly reveals shrewdness and great tenderness towards people. He overcomes all social differences and unselfishly rushes to the aid of everyone. While watching, it seems that Forrest is a robot who just does whatever he is told. But thanks to Tom Hanks' brilliant acting, the character acquires an unexpected dramatic depth. Forrest Gump is a polygenre movie. There is a place in it for the story of growing up, a sad melodrama, and a military epic. Tom Hanks had to play in several registers, from a comic character and war hero to a wise simpleton and caring father. The actor sometimes switched between sharply different atmospheric scenes on the same shooting day.
My AD came up to me and he said, "Hey, you know what? The company's parked here. The oak tree's right there.
Oh, right.
Let's shoot this.
Wow.
This after lunch." He's going, "Hey, Tom."
You ready?
"Hey, Tom, yeah, how about we do Jenny's grave after lunch, you know?" And Tom, you know, "Great."
Not surprisingly, Hanks won his second Oscar for his role as Forrest Gump. Moreover, his payment was not fixed, but expressed as a percentage of the earnings from the movie screenings, which eventually brought him tens of millions of dollars. One of the most famous examples of star deals in Hollywood. According to the creator's vision, Forrest is a simple guy who can always be relied on and is a model citizen of the future century. American movies constantly show stories of people ready to step over others on the way to the goal. But Forrest is naively kind to others and accepts any work as a matter of course.
Done, drill sergeant! Go!
At the same time, he easily achieves everything a typical social climber dreams of: winning an international tournament, national fame, and commercial success. And even those coincidences that act in favor of the protagonist do not seem to be simple luck. Here, Zemeckis draws on the Protestant work ethic underlying American capitalism. It's like he's telling the audience, be honest, follow the rules, work hard, enjoy the process, and fate will reward you. The success of Forrest Gump is greatly owed to the talent of screenwriter Eric Roth. He chose a story within a story model, in which we see events through Forrest's own eyes. They add up to a huge retrospective, which the character narrates to random strangers at the bus stop. However, the interesting trick is that the real start of the plot occurs only at the end of the second hour, when Forrest jumps off the bench and rushes to Jenny. Everything before that is just a long story about the past, which would only take up Act 1 in any other movie. But what is more important, Eric Roth managed to make a heartwarming story in which every viewer can find something about themselves. Another important part of the success is the cost-effective and precise directing of Robert Zemeckis. He is one of those directors who emphasize the story through visual language without letting the form overpower the content. Like his colleague and friend Steven Spielberg, Zemeckis loves in-frame editing. That is, the movement of the camera and actors in the frame replaces frequent splices. Take a look at this scene. A ping pong table already appears in the frame, but the center of the composition is occupied by Forrest and the TV set. The camera makes a smooth run over the protagonist. The ping pong player is out of the frame, attracting Forrest's attention. And now the protagonist takes the racket. The composition is completed. Such long shots are not common for the modern mainstream and look more like a fop. But for directors who continue the tradition of classic Hollywood cinema, including Zemeckis, such an example allows them to convey maximum information in minimum time without irritating the audience with frequent splices. The opening shot of the movie, which fulfills several important tasks, is done in a similar way. It shows the scale, mood, and one of the central motifs: life as an unpredictable feather flight. Besides, the beginning also introduces us to the protagonist, and this encounter begins with his shoes. Dirty sneakers contrast with a clean and neat suit. Those who have watched the movie know that these are sneakers with a history. Oh, and Forrest's storytelling is impossible without focusing on his feet. And literally, after a couple of minutes, as if intriguing the audience, Forrest will say,
"There's an awful lot you can tell about a person by their shoes."
By the way, we will look at Forrest from the point of view of a distant, as if a celestial observer, more than once. This is how his disproportionality to the country's history is emphasized. The editing in the movie is unnoticeable and has no flashy formal solutions. Mostly it helps move the story forward or changes the tone of the narrative. For example, in this scene, which begins with a quiet traveling, the filmmaker switched to dynamic editing only when we see a battle. Another major strength of the movie is the use of visual effects, awarded by the American Film Institute. Zemeckis has been enthusiastically engaging technological innovations in filmmaking for almost his entire career. But here, unlike the later The Polar Express or Beowulf, they do not overshadow the story, but instead help narrate it. Tom Hanks' character is portrayed in the Chronicle with real historical personalities, as if he were a real participant in the events. This is how Forrest Gump overcomes realism and denotes his fabulousness. Interestingly, some scenes involve the use of sophisticated computerized lip-fitting of historical characters to make it look as if they were talking to Forrest. And in the Elvis scene, the voice of the king of rock and roll is parodied by Kurt Russell, who marvelously copies Elvis's mannerisms. All this makes Forrest Gump a special fairy tale. Realism smoothly flows into conventionality, but the audience accepts the rules of the game. Historical chronicles and TV footage become the backbone, supporting the inserts with Forrest's fictional participation. Sometimes Zemeckis even imitates the style of TV commercials. For example, in the scenes of Gump running across the country, we feel as if we are watching a commercial about sports sneakers. not a fictional movie scene. At the 1995 Oscars, Forrest Gump beat out such titans as The Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction, winning 6 statuettes, including major nominations. Skeptics probably thought it was a compromise and the movie would be quickly forgotten, but history has decided otherwise. Forrest Gump is still one of the main audience favorites, and purely American problems here are not an obstacle. Experience has shown that the movie equally touches the hearts of viewers around the world. The story of a boy with poor health and a low IQ who becomes a war veteran, a ping pong champion, and a successful entrepreneur who has made a career out of shrimp is infectiously optimistic. While the people around Forrest were tormented by fears and doubts, while wars began and ended and presidents changed, he faithfully did his job, no matter what. He took care of his loved ones and never gave up hope for the future. At the same time, the movie ironically reinterprets the classic archetype of the American dream. Gump doesn't strive for wealth, bulldozing his way to the top, but he gets it. He doesn't reach for fame, but becomes famous. In the end, he epitomizes the core values: perseverance, an open heart, and a belief in a happy outcome. Perhaps this is the therapeutic power of the movie, which makes you come back to it again and again. After all, as we know, life is a box of chocolates, and you never know what's inside. And if you follow Forrest's philosophy, it's enough to run forward, continuing your business and remaining kind to those around you. This is what helped the movie become truly iconic around the world.